I think this means we're live. Hi,
Okay.
everybody, and welcome to Friday Fun Day here on Substack. I am here with my friend, longtime acquaintance and
Mhm.
colleague in a certain way, but newer colleague, Jill Oaf. And Jill actually has been helping me a ton on the backside with some research and data. We started this very cool group over on Instagram. It's a private channel called the
Mhm.
Boho Brain Trust, a group of very cool people who are all interested in relational wealth and who are really going to be the brain trust for my new book, Getting Relationally Rich. And Jill has been very helpful in like helping me capture and catalog all of these like responses and data that we are gathering in real time for the book, but also for these like interesting emerging conversations that are happening. So that is who Jill is in my world. We've worked together more loosely, kind of closer in
Yeah.
some ways, more loosely in other ways through our work with Fair Trade Fashion. She was a Seiko Fellow and Noonday Ambassador. So a little bit of
Mhm.
history on Jill. But a couple days ago, Jill sent me some text messages that were not work related, but were actually personal. And she was asking me some questions in my perspective on her life and her life
Mhm.
design and some big conversations that her and her husband Andrew are having. And so we were texting back and forth, and I was like, we should probably just hop on a call. And then occupational hazard of being friends with me, I was like, instead of it just being a private call, what if we actually took this and had this call on a Substack Live? So, to be totally clear, I'm not exactly sure how this is all going to unfold and what we're going to talk about, but I know it has to do with life design, getting relationally rich, and some big decisions that her and her husband are making around this topic. So, Jill, give the people, I have context on you.
Yeah.
But before we
Mhm.
really dive into like what are the specific questions and conversations you're having around where you're going to live, will you just give us a
Mhm.
little bit of background? Like, where do you live now? How long have you lived there? Why'd you choose to live there? What's working and what's not working right now?
Yeah. Yeah. So we currently are outside of Austin.
Okay.
And if you go back a few years, we were in the Portland area. We were in the Washington area with all our family. My husband grew up in Portland. That's where all of the people are. And then we COVID hit a month before my son was born. And so I had all these thoughts of like, we're gonna go to these moms groups and meet all these people and have all this community. And that didn't happen. So
Womp
then,
womp.
yeah, yeah, digital connection became the way that you did it in specifically Pacific Northwest. Like it was pretty much digital. And so that opened the door of like, we could live anywhere and still be connected to our family, all of this. So then that led us to Texas the first time, East Texas. And that was a decision. It was a lot about the sunshine because our kids were very young and it was a financial decision. My husband could retire if we moved there. So it was just like, well, that makes sense. Let's go. So we lived in
Just
East Texas
because,
for a little
just
bit.
like little color behind that is the cost of living and just like what you would be able to sell like, a house for and buy a house for. That's largely where that calculation was coming from, was like
So
real
sure.
estate prices. Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
The amount of money that houses were going for in Washington were insane. And we could buy for half of what we sold for. We were already on like an early retirement thing. And so that was like, this cuts off 5, 6 years of this. And, so finances were a huge piece because then it gave my husband time to be full time dad, and for all of us to get those time together. So that's like this weird nuance piece of this. But we moved. We were there for about
But I
15
do just
months.
want to double tap in and say you made a decision about where to live. That's a very common framework. Maybe not to
Mhm.
retire early as young as you all are, but just like financial
Mhm.
implications, real estate, how much square footage can you get? Like that's a very normal, respectable way framework for
Yeah.
evaluating where you're going to raise your family.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had gone to college in Texas. I went to Baylor. And so it was like, oh, we'd been to Tyler. It's familiar enough. Like it, I don't know, it didn't feel as big of a decision as this one does. So then we were there for about 15 months and didn't really get rooted. And at that point, we're like, we can live anywhere. Why are we in East Texas? So then we sold everything and traveled the world for 2 years. Um, which was awesome, awesome time with family and our family, like us, like our marriage and our 2 boys, like that was awesome. Really good time together. Then we knew when we made that decision, we said, if we can't get community figured out, this is not going to last. And so we didn't. And so it didn't. And so we have connections with people all over the world, good friendships, all of that, but we didn't have our people. Um, and lots of potentials and all that, like traveling families together and all those things. We did some of that. It was not what it needed to be. And so we stopped. And so that's when we chose this area because we had been to the area. We're like, okay, we can live anywhere. Let's pick the best place to live. We've traveled the world, all this. And we landed here because it's such a family friendly place. We're in Cedar Park, which is like just north of Austin. And the playgrounds alone are like worth moving for. Like, it's just crazy. And our boys are very young. They're 4 and 6 right now. And so outdoor sunshine, cost of living was awesome. Like everything tracked with the decisions that we were making of what we think life could be like. And
Yeah.
so
Okay. Again,
we moved here
pretty
about,
classic
yeah,
framework. We're checking
right.
boxes here, like
Yeah.
neighborhoods, schools,
Truly how to
parks,
live.
cost of
Yeah.
living. And
Yeah.
you're nailing it. You're nailing
Yeah.
it. And everyone else, I'm sure, is going like, wow, you guys are really thoughtful, reasonable, smart adults with your checklist. This is how we make decisions. Great. Okay.
Right.
So you
Yeah.
landed here.
Yes. And all the while, like I listen to everything you ever put out. And so I'm like, and our deepest desire is for community and connection. Like my husband's working on frameworks around all that stuff. Like it is ingrained in who we are, and we did not have it. And so there's a podcast you did, Melissa Radke, I think, where you talked about like the different vocational only or family, like whatever you call that, the different
Yeah.
phases. And that
Yeah.
was a big turning point for me because it was like, okay, well, my immediate family, good, not lonely, like really, really good. Vocational, awesome. Proximate, no. And that was like we have we feel like we've done so much to pursue it and tried it and we've done all these things and tried all this, in our last year here. And we know it takes time, but we just decided like within the last couple weeks, we decided we have to be by family. And so if we're going all in with the community, we need to be by family to like that has to be there because here we're not close to family. And so it was like, okay, we know we're going all in with community. Let's at least be by family. Okay, so we're going to be in the Portland area. Now what? It's kind of where we're at. So
Okay.
that's kind of
So
the backstory.
a couple of things that I just want to point out that are so helpful. Yes, on the podcast with Melissa Radke, if you haven't listened to it yet, it's a great one.
Really,
But
really
we kind
good.
of get into this idea, and now that I can actually talk about it more freely because the name of my book is public,
Yeah.
this idea that we all have a portfolio in the same way that we have a financial portfolio, right? Like
Mhm.
savings and investments and 401ks and liquid cash, all of these things when it comes to our relational wealth, we have a similar portfolio, which means like not all wealth looks the same. It doesn't all function the same. And so oftentimes when we are evaluating our relational wealth and how to invest in that and grow in that, it can be really helpful to just look at your portfolio in a way that's a little bit more detailed because going like I just feel lonely and disconnected is probably going to make you feel pretty overwhelmed and underwater of just like oh what
Mhm.
how do I fix this giant bad feeling. It's just
Yeah.
like, wow,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But if we can get a little bit more nuanced and you can kind of go through these different key areas of your portfolio, one, oftentimes it ends up being very encouraging because you go like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm
Yeah.
not just like globally, universally lonely. Look at these areas of my portfolio that are
Mhm.
actually performing really well. So
Yeah.
for you, it was like nuclear family, marriage, relationship with your kids, like check.
Mm.
It was, like really strong. What was the other portfolio area that you mentioned that you were doing well in?
Vocational. Vocation, like my
Oh,
work,
yeah,
stuff
vocationally.
yeah.
Work. You do work that you love. You've got a great team. You feel really connected
Mhm.
from like a colleague standpoint. Great check. So first of all, the nice thing about evaluating your portfolio is one, actually just getting some wins and going like, okay, there actually are some strong areas
Yeah.
where I don't need to start from scratch. I actually just need to like tend to care
Mhm.
for, the investment that you're already making. But then you came to an area where you were like proximate friends.
Mhm.
Friends that I'm doing daily life with. These are the types of friends that it is like you are running late from the board meeting and you can't get your kids before pickup. Who are you going to call? You've got a kid who is sick and it's 10 o'clock at night and your husband's traveling for work and you need baby Tylenol. It
Mhm.
is your kid, you're having a birthday party and you're literally just like, is anybody going to show up? Or you want to start a book club? All of these
Yeah.
things, that's kind of your proximate people. I would say, honestly, these are your friends realistically. If you are going to be doing life together, you either need to have a few institutions, a church, a school, a gym, a soccer field that you're really committed to. So you're both going
Mhm.
to the same place at least weekly, if not multiple
Mhm.
times a week. There needs to be a shared third space that you are both committed to. And that's going to create this kind of proximate overlap. Or you just need to live honestly within like a mile of one
Yeah.
another. That is what
I'm taking
that is
notes
what
because this is like literally like we're deciding these things. I'm
Okay,
like,
okay,
okay,
yes.
institutions
Okay,
once a week.
okay.
Got
Yes.
it.
So I do, yes, there are kind of two different ways to go about the proximity. It is based on a third space,
Mhm.
or it is truly just based off of how close you live to one another. And what
Mhm.
I've seen, and then once you get into kind of a mile radius, this is the distance where you are no longer the risk of dropping by or the cost of just swing by my house. We'll swing by yours. We'll grab this kid goes down so dramatically. So the likelihood that you actually are asking for help in the first place skyrockets because it is so much easier to give help when you are
Yeah.
proximate. Actually, this week was an amazing example of this. In our little community of 7 families, 3 of the husbands were out of town, which is kind of a lot all at once. And the other 2 moms of the other families had super busy work weeks. They both work outside of the home, and I had some flexibility this week. And so I kind of became like the default summer mom. But like the impact that that had on my friends of like somebody is literally picking our kids up, taking them to school, bringing them back home from school, hanging out with them until I can get home from the
Mhm.
office at 6 p.m.
Mhm.
Huge impact. That is a
Mhm.
enormous impact in their life. Cost to me, very low because these kids all live within a mile from me. So
Mhm.
it's like swinging by to pick them up, like letting them hang out in my backyard. Big propaganda piece as Americans we need to know is that more kids is not more work.
Yeah.
Actually, more kids is typically same work, sometimes less work. I
Yeah.
find that having a gaggle of kids actually sometimes makes my work as supervisor easier because there are more options for
Right.
connections and entertainment. Sometimes when
Mhm.
my kids or my 3 boys are just like in a frenemy state and they're just kind
Mhm.
of like fighting with each other and they can't get into a groove, we bring 3 more kids into our backyard and it's like poof, it's gone.
Right.
A new social dynamic has been created. It's automatically more fun. So, one, just like not no more work on me to supervise 9 kids in my backyard after school than my own 3 kids, and very little additional work to get, drop off, pick up these kids because they live so close to me. In fact, one just would come over to my house in the morning, walk down the block and come to my house in the morning, and I would take him to the summer program.
Which I think
So,
a piece of this is like the age of kid matters.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
our general age, if you need to have tons of extra car seats and, babies crying and all that, maybe not as
yeah.
much of a supervision role. But my kids, I would totally see that. Like if we had that, I can absolutely see. I mean, I see it with them just by themselves. And then if one other person or 2 other people, it's like, I'm not even needed in this. They're
Totally.
just
Yes.
going.
We go from like the American mom as cruise director to the like more historically and globally normative role of a parent, which is like general safety and
Right.
loose facilitator. But like it is
Right.
not on you. Also, why are we doing jobs that a 7-year-old is more equipped to do? A seven
I
year
heard
old
say
is
that I heard you say that saying when I was in Spain. I was on this walk, and I think maybe you were talking with Joy. I don't know, but you said it, and I'm like, we don't have other 7-year-olds around. Like, it's just us. This isn't gonna last.
You might think what you need is other adults, and that could be true. It might need that
Yeah.
you need a few other 7-year-olds. I will tell you,
Yeah.
who is better at entertaining your kids, another parent, you or a 7-year-old? The 7-year-old
Yeah.
is going to be your A team player. You got to recruit the kids for the kids. No wonder we are feeling this wild mix of being both bored out of our minds and overstimulated. That's because we're doing jobs that God made for 10-year-olds. And we're taking the 10-year-olds' jobs. Don't take their jobs, okay?
Don't
Uh,
take from kids. That's the
don't
deal.
take a 10-year-old's job, okay? Mind your business. Okay, so my kind of theory on proximity is, so you've got the mile radius is when these high impact offering
Mhm.
to help but low lift high impact interactions really start to happen. There is another level of proximity, which you are getting even closer. That is like walking distance. And
Mhm.
then, so this is like, and with kids our age and younger, this I
Mhm.
find definitely matters. Not getting in the car, not dealing with car seats. And
Mhm.
then the third level would be what I call baby monitor distance. So
Right.
this is the
Yeah.
level of proximity that you are so close to one another, proximately, that you can leave your kids at home when they're sleeping with a baby monitor, walk to the neighbor's
Mhm.
house with your baby monitor, and there's truly very little friction in those interactions and connections. So those are kind of like the three levels of proximity, and they all have value. My thesis that I want to stop apologizing for is that the closer the proximity, the higher the value, and just
Yeah.
more of those kind of like low lift, high impact
Mhm.
interactions are going to be happening. Okay, so
Mhm.
let's get back to your situation.
Okay.
You did the great work of not going like, whoa, we're lonely and disconnected on a whole. You really were able to kind of evaluate your portfolio and go, okay,
Mhm.
it's proximate friends that we could really be upping our investment in. And
Yeah.
this led you to really reopening a pretty big decision of actually thinking about moving,
Yeah.
moving across the country,
Mhm.
not for financial gain, not to follow a
Oh,
job, but truly, this move would be saying, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is you and Andrew. You're basically being like, we think our relational wealth is actually the most important form of wealth that we have as a family. And therefore, we want to prioritize it. We're willing to index a really big decision that pretty much
mhm.
impacts every part of our life:
Mhm.
finances, location, job opportunities, all of these
Mhm.
things. You're willing to go, yeah, let's index on relational wealth here. Does that feel accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah. The other
Okay.
day when we were talking about it, I obviously am well aware of your book title. And I was like, Andrew, we need to figure out what rich we want to be. Like,
Mm.
do we want to be relationally rich? Because moving to Portland is not a good financial decision. And it's like in the same sense, like we're gonna be fine financially. But if we're talking like, I mean, we're talking like double. So
Oh, let me just tell you. Let me just tell you. This coming from someone who lives where you're thinking about moving, it's a
Yep.
terrible financial decision. One time I
Yes.
did an awful thing. I did a terrible thing and I basically put into ChatGPT all of our finances and had it run some different scenarios about what our financial situation would be if we lived in other areas of the
Oh,
country.
don't do it.
And
Don't do
and
it.
that is information that I can never unsee. I can never unsee it.
Yeah.
But in another way, I'm actually glad that I did, because it kind of solidified there was something really empowering looking at an actual number
Mhm.
that was not insignificant and
Mhm.
going, is that number every
Yeah.
single year? And thinking about how that number, if we were investing it,
Mhm.
would compound very significantly by,
Mhm.
retirement. Is
Yep.
this number worth to me getting poorer relationally? And the
Right.
answer was just such a non
Mhm.
it was like such a no-brainer, like, no way. No
Yep.
way would I pay, that cost is not worth it to me. And
Mhm.
actually being on the other side of that, it's quite satisfying to go like, "Oh, I've kind of," because what I kind of did on accident was like assign a minimum monetary value to my relational wealth and go like, "I don't even know what the number is, but that
Yeah.
high number wasn't even high enough." And there's something really like energizing and kind of empowering about like we're
Mhm.
making certain choices. There is
Mhm.
a cost associated to it. And I believe that it's still the best investment that we could be making.
Right. And I mean, I think we do recognize like we are fortunate to have this decision to make. Like
Sure.
we don't have to
Yes.
live here. We don't have, we're fine. I told you, like we retired, we're financially independent. Everything's fine financially. But if you could get in the mindset of a man who said, who made finances like we retired early and what that means
And
for
you
investing money
sacrificed
and like
really significantly to do that. Like you were very disciplined and thoughtful and
yeah,
intentional around your family
yeah.
finances. Yeah.
On a spreadsheet, this move does not look good. But we can and we recognize we can and all of those things. So I think even like okay, we're choosing to move to the Portland area. Okay, if you live in Washington, that's a different financial picture than in Oregon. And we're
Hmm.
still choosing Oregon.
Hmm.
Like I think you had said something like blocks are more important than neighborhoods or or
Yes.
something. Like
Yeah.
it's
Like your
actually like
neighborhood block will determine the quality of your life much more than your zip code,
yeah.
which determines your life much more than your city and much more than your state. It's like you want to talk about relational wealth specifically as it relates to proximity. It is like make it smaller and smaller and
Mhm.
smaller because the smaller that little radius is actually the bigger impact that that has on your life. And if you live in a neighborhood where just your block feels connected, engaged,
Mhm.
there's friendship, there's mutual help, it doesn't actually matter. Like if your larger surrounding city area neighborhood isn't actually that connected, you're going to receive like 80% of the benefits. And I think that's important for people to understand because I think when we talk about it more on like a systems level or city level or zip code level or even neighborhood level, a lot of us, myself included, can feel really overwhelmed. Like I'm not a neighborhood
Right.
community like civic organizer. I'm like a mom with a
Yeah.
job and a life, you know.
I just
And
want a
so
friend that lives close.
just want a friend.
Right.
I think that is the thing that I want people to understand about relational wealth is like actually just start smaller and these seemingly small investments are actually going to make an enormous impact. You do not need a huge network.
Mhm.
It's actually like the your closest
Mhm.
3 to 15 people are going to really determine 90% of your relational wealth. And I don't know about anybody else. Feel free to comment as you're listening to this. To me, that actually feels like, oh, I can take a breath of relief because all of a sudden it feels like containable. It feels achievable. It just feels so much smaller than like, I just have to be this like social butterfly who has this huge network and lives in a good connected like city. No,
Yeah.
no, you don't. You
Okay,
need a
so
connected block. Okay.
I have a question for you.
Okay. Yes.
So put yourself in my shoes. Pretend you don't have this really awesome, rich community for the last 15 years that you created,
Hmm.
and you're moving to a place to be closer with family. What do you like? What do you do your first 30 days, 60 days? It's going to take like what, 4 years to develop this? Like
Yeah.
it's a long time, but like if you find an institution, is what I heard you say.
Yep.
And what do you
Okay.
do?
Okay. So you mean when you move to a specific neighborhood? Because actually, okay, I want to answer this, but you have a specific
That's true.
situation that you're
Example.
like,
Yeah.
let's back up a
Hmm.
little bit and talk about. So you're like, okay, Portland is where family is. So
Hmm.
one thing that you're doing, which I think is really smart, is you're picking a relational wealth anchor. Like there is a reason that is like pretty solid. You are not going, we're going to move to Tennessee. We know no one there, but we like think it might be easier to make friends in Tennessee. You're going like there's an existing place where we already have an existing element of our portfolio, which is your family, but you realize that you need and want more than just those familial relationships. So, talk to us through how you're kind of thinking about some friend dynamics.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I think that's really good because that's a huge piece of this. I didn't have the language for it, but relational wealth anchor. You should put that in your book if it's not there. Like, that's a good one because we were like we moved here and we're like, we'll cultivate community, all this stuff, but because it takes so long, what do you do in the meantime? Like
Yeah.
you just feel lonely. And so having family, we know we're going all in, we know it takes work, we know all of that for community. Having family there is like I'm mainly thinking of my kids.
Yeah.
Of like
Yes. Yeah.
they have people and, anyways. But
Okay,
then there's
so
also
really quick to pause. Wow, it's gonna be who's surprised that
no,
this is gonna be a long conversation? And not
no,
me, and probably not you.
nope,
Um, so here is one thing that I want to encourage people. Family is a fantastic relational wealth anchor
mhm,
worth moving towards. If you have relatively, they do not need to be perfect. If you have relatively healthy family
right,
and being around them on
right,
the whole feels more safe and supportive than it does stressful or unsafe. Family is a fantastic relational anchor. All of the data shows that kids and grandparents, it's better for both of them. So, yay for making your extended family a potential anchor. Here is
mhm,
the cautionary tale. Here is that I want to share about anchoring, about it being your core anchor.
mhm,
If you have family in town, you have to be very intentional about developing the types of friend relationships that if you have family in town, you're going to naturally default towards your family.
yep,
So, because it's way more comfortable to ask your
which
family for help
we
or,
did for 7 years. So,
okay,
we were
yes,
over
yeah,
here, we went over here, now we're like,
yeah,
where is
yeah.
this?
You know, one
Mhm,
of my theses of why I think we experienced it still was long. It still took us like probably 2 or 3 years to get kind of like our core group of friends here in Portland.
mhm,
And then we started having the conversation around proximate living and buying houses together. But it took several years of literally weekly
mhm,
investment in order to kind
mhm,
of cultivate that core group. So that's the first thing I want to say. And I even then think 2 to 3 years is like pretty fast. Like we
yeah,
don't assume we're going to see a return on our financial investments. If you're investing in things in your portfolio that you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to see a return on this in 24 months." I'm like, "Tell me where you're investing."
right,
Um so we have this really good understanding that with financial wealth, compounding interest and time is honestly, the most important part.
mhm,
But with relational wealth, it's so tender. It's so
mhm,
tender and we can get so discouraged so quickly. So I think the fact that it took us 2 to 3 years of weekly investment is actually kind of on the fast side. And
yeah,
one of my theses around why it congealed even faster is because almost everybody in this specific friend group doesn't have family in town.
mhm, mhm,
And so it forced us really early on to start relying on one another and making and giving asks that for me, in my American existence, I was like, "Oh, that's something you only ask family for." It now
right,
feels mind-boggling to me that I had that. But I'm talking about like, a run to Walgreens to get the baby Tylenol, pick up from the airport, help
mhm,
moving, just these like
yeah,
borrowing a tool. I don't have a specific tool and I only need it once. Do I really want to like go buy one or go through the formal process of renting it? All of these small micro asks that if your parents live a mile away or in the same city and you have a decent relationship with them, they're going to be your number one choice. And so, what
mhm,
I just want to say for anybody who is using extended family as like your relational anchor, just be really conscious of going like, okay, I
mhm,
have an ask, I have a need, I have something I want to do. I'm not going to actually ask my family first. I'm going to build this muscle with this friend group, whether it's an existing friend group or one you're actually really trying to build, because that interdependence, that teaming up and the create framework, if you will, asking is not an ask. It's actually a gift. It is an investment in the relationship. And your people will not feel comfortable asking you for anything if you never ask them for anything because you're always relying on your nuclear family. So
mhm,
just kind of one like nuance and thing to think about
yeah,
if your anchor is
yeah,
your extended
for
family.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have family in Portland, and then we almost have like 2 pockets we're kind of deciding between. We are planning on renting when we're there, so, you know, not like a huge commitment, but our kids are starting school in September, so
Yeah.
commitment,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like there's this one pocket that there's some potential for some really rich friendships. Um, and then there's another pocket that's
Tell us real quick, tell us about the pocket. How many connections in what square mileage do you have?
I don't know square mileage, one little suburb, I
Okay.
don't know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
that's like 5, 6, they're all right
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Yeah,
That is
um,
a big nucleus.
a huge one, but
That's a
those are
lot.
not those are not like deep rooted friendships for the last 15 years. Nobody's saying, please come live with us. We're all together. Like,
Yeah.
this is like, this would be risky. And we think it could be awesome. But that is like, well, how do you know if everybody already has their own little supper club and you're invited? Or like, how do you know? I've heard you say, like, look for the losers. How do you know who the losers are? Like,
Yeah.
we want the losers, but like, how do you know that before
Yeah.
you decide where you're living? Like,
Yep. Yep.
if there was somebody like a friend that was like, come live with us, and it like, that's a different story.
Sure.
This is
Yeah.
like, we're choosing 2 areas, and part of it, like, we're gonna drive around it. We have some parameters we want for our kids and all that stuff. But this one is, like, a lot of potential, and then this one is so
Well,
safe.
so quick question on the potential. Uh,
Mhm.
you have individual relationships with 5 or 6 families. Did they have relationships with one another yet?
Yeah, the institution unifies everybody there.
Okay.
Um,
What is the institution?
it's a church.
It's a
Yeah.
church. Okay. So they all go to the same church and they live
Mhm,
in a similar neighborhood. Got it.
mhm,
Okay. So they're all kind of
mhm.
already friends with one another.
Yeah, and, we
Check.
we one of our stints was about 3 months in Portland a couple years ago, and we were part of that church for that
Okay.
3 months for that summer. My husband, phenomenal men's group, so it's all these men that my husband, like,
Wow.
really
That's so rare.
track.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, men that are choosing to wake up at 6 a.m. to get together every single week, like, good,
Okay.
good,
Ooh,
really
ooh,
established, good. I know.
okay. It's going to be hard to compete with that, but give us the
I
other
know.
option.
The other option is families there. Every school in that area is awesome. Uh, like, perfect little suburbia, like, whatever, safe. Everything's completely safe there. This one, a little closer to, Portland,
Yep.
homelessness, all the stuff that,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
whatever you see on the news, it's closer to that. It's probably
Hmm.
not that extreme that you see on the news, but
It's
it's
not.
closer. Yeah.
I promise.
Yeah. But it is closer. There's, like, one school that everybody's kinda said, "This is a really good one." The other, "You might wanna stay away from that." And so it's like, okay, well, what if I don't know, just feels riskier, whereas this
Yeah.
one is like, anywhere you live, you're fine in this little suburb. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
and families
Okay.
there and, all that.
Okay. So you've got, and how far are these neighborhoods away from each other?
I don't know, 20 minutes? Like,
Okay. Cool.
not far. So if we're over here, we still get family. If we're over here, we don't get this. But there could be that, like, there could be rich community just there, we just don't know those people. There is, like,
Could be.
there's a family we have some friends in that area, but like you were saying, it's like, well, blocks are important. So we're like, "Okay,
Okay,
where
so
do we
not
live?"
only are blocks important, but here's another thing that I want to dissect is what 20 minutes in the car means to a family relationship versus what 20 minutes in the car means to a friend relationship.
Well, that
If you
yeah.
have connection, if you're a relatively healthy family, uh, grandparents, 20 minutes to see the grandkids is nothing.
Mhm.
You and Andrew, 20 minutes to go over to your parents' house, have them cook you a meal. You get to kind of turn off and be a kid for a minute. 20 minutes, nothing. You're going to get in the car for Christmas
Right.
morning. 20 minutes is nothing. For
Mm.
the whatever spring concert, 20 minutes is nothing for those relationships. 20
So I
minutes
knew
is a lot for developing friendships.
I
That
did
is
not wanna ask you these
so
questions
much.
because I knew what you would say, and I don't wanna live there.
Okay,
But
so
okay. So
okay,
over
so
here is, like,
yeah,
super safe, and that's like, "We're moving across the country. Can we just do that?"
yeah.
This one is like, okay, if we had that depth of relationship, if we had any screener, we could do ahead of time of like, "Do you wanna in? Do you wanna do this life together?" Which, like, maybe is just conversation. I don't know.
Okay,
That would be
so
easy.
two things, two things. First is the use of the word safe. Okay. I know exactly what you mean when you're talking about that. Like good schools, good
Yeah,
vibes,
can't
great,
go
well
wrong. Yeah.
kept sidewalks. That is typically what we mean when we say safe in America is basically like crime. Like, what is the likelihood that your kid is going to witness something, that your house is going to get broken into, that, something unsavory in the neighborhood is going to happen? That's what typically we mean by like a safe neighborhood. I would argue that if you are evaluating your life and trying to build your relational wealth portfolio, our definition of safe, it doesn't actually hold. I
Yeah.
haven't done I've done some research around this, and I'm probably going to enroll and enlist you to help me do
Yep.
some more. So I will just say, I know that what I'm about to say is less based off of like a super rich data and more just like born of my own experience of living in some extremes, that I have a pretty strong bias against upper middle class suburbs if you want to be relationally rich. There, I said it. I
Okay.
said it.
No, exactly. So
I'm not
right
saying it can't
before this
happen.
call, right before this call, I was like, okay, Andrew, is there anything else, like any questions you like genuinely have? And it was that basically. It was
I
like, is
do.
this even possible in that type of demographic?
It is absolutely possible. And I know that there are going to be people who listen to this that are like, I live in an upper middle class or
Right,
a
right, right,
wealthy suburb and we have got great connection. I am not saying that there are not exceptions to the rule. I'm going to say the more protected, safe, uniform, and the higher socioeconomic status people are in, the harder it is going to be to build relational wealth.
yeah,
And we could have an
yeah.
entire conversation, everything around the physical design of a wealthy suburb: big lots, big yards, big
Mhm.
fences,
Right.
garages that are behind the house where you literally drive in. You go behind your house, you shut your
Mhm.
garage door, you walk into your kitchen. These are seemingly innocuous architectural design decisions that are
Mhm.
literally designing against community and connection. I live
Mhm.
in a neighborhood where no one, for the most part, has a garage. A lot of us don't even have like a carport. Street parking is like
Mhm.
that is the average in my neighborhood. In
Mhm.
the last 10 years, we have had 2 cars stolen off of our block. It's not insane. It's
Yeah.
not great. Okay. The
Yeah.
metrics there are like, one is like, could be a fluke. Two, in 10 years, like, not awesome.
Yeah.
So there's a cost. There's a cost to parking on the street. The level of natural interaction and connection that we have with our neighbors, it compounds so much over time. And I'm talking about just our neighbors, our like accidental neighbors, not our like best friend
Mhm.
neighbors.
Mhm.
The two women, they're two single women in their like 60s. One of the husband passed away and her best friend moved in. Barb and Jill have become like such fixtures in our life and in our
Yeah.
neighborhood. And there has been truly very little intentionality, but we see each other multiple times a day because my minivan is parked right in front of my house. So we're talking
Right.
about an actual, like, the
Yeah.
way that, and I don't live in a low income neighborhood, but I don't live in an area that you would call it's urban and it's like
Yeah.
mixed income. And so you're everything from the architectural design all the way down to now we're just getting in the psychology of what
Right.
actual wealth does to us, what we value, what we
Mhm.
prioritize. And a lot of those things correlate with it's harder to
Yeah.
make friends and to be relationally wealthy. So I have a
Yeah.
bias. I have a
No,
bias
of course.
against
I
pretty
know.
safe
I know.
suburbs.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
there's a book Tribe. I can't remember if I've talked with you about it before. Forgot his name. Younger is the last name, I think. He Andrew was reading that a couple months ago, and in it it talks about this basic idea of the wealthier you are, the harder it is. And he didn't use this language, but because I work with you, I knew interdependence. That's the barrier to actual, like, rich community together. So that's been
It
in the
is.
back of my mind too of like, okay, I
And
think
here's
they
the thing about an interdependence in America is that oftentimes, if we can, we will. So if I
Mhm.
can afford to call an Uber, I
Right.
will call an Uber. So all of a sudden, these things that for hundreds and hundreds of years, these just like normal everyday life things, these ways in which, and I actually just writing this morning looked up, I was like, I wonder what the root of the word obligation is, because I
Mhm.
think that obligation has become such a dirty word for us. It's just like, oh, it's an obligation. I don't want to do it. It feels heavy. Maybe I need a boundary. It's very obligatory. My heart's not in it, whatever it is. And so I looked up what the root of the word obligation is, and the Latin word means to be bound or tied to something. And I thought, oh my gosh, this was so many of us have such a deep soul level spiritual longing to just be bound together
Mhm.
to something that's bigger than us in this word that like you show up even when you don't want to is that's literally what it means. This is what
Yeah.
creates those ties. And in American culture now, I will say our friend group, I'm very proud of this, is that it's been so intentional, but we have been
Mhm.
so intentional to kind of develop this rule of like, just because you can afford it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that you shouldn't ask, you shouldn't borrow, you shouldn't use this
Yeah.
as an opportunity to connect. So we've created just needing one another has become honestly like a wealth status. And it's like
Mhm.
embarrassing to
Mhm.
all pretty much every need that we used to rely on other people for in the last truly just 7 or 8 years. There is a paid gig economy solve for that as long as you can afford it. There is
Mhm.
TaskRabbit, there is Instacart, there is Uber, there is Lyft, there are home clean, there everything you could imagine that you used to ask your neighbor for. If you can afford it, now you
Mhm.
can get it through an app. And so the impact that that has, if you're around a lot of people who have that mentality, if I can afford it, I'll do it on my own. Okay,
Mhm.
great. See how that works out for you 10 to 20
Right.
years from now.
Right. Mhm.
And I don't know that your Instacart gal is going to be at your kid's wake, but
Yeah.
you could try. Like you could actually form a deep relationship with your
Right.
Instacart person if it's the same person over and over. But I think you get my point. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
so let's dive in. I want to dive into another really practical question that you had. Gosh,
Okay.
I could keep going for forever.
I mean,
And I'm
mhm.
apologizing to people, but I'm like, you're free to go. I mean, you can log off if you need to. We're
Yeah.
gonna stay here and dive into this. Okay. Um, let's talk about, you said, well, how do you know?
Yeah.
How do you know what's going on? What am I
Mhm.
invited into? What are people longing for that doesn't quite exist? Ooh, so Julie has a good question. Do you recommend you start being bold and ask and see how it's reciprocated? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely 100%. And I would
Like,
say
if
I
your
go
book would just come out that I can be like, "Hey, read this. What do you think?" And that's my safe way of Do you
well,
wanna do
like
this?
I just had a situation actually where a fellow mom, a very new burgeoning friendship for me, um, asked if she was already going to be at the boys' basketball camp. And she was like, asked if I wanted her to take the kids and bring them back to our house after. So this is kind of flipping it because she was the first one to offer. But I will just
Mhm.
say, I had time in my calendar that day. And it's a 9-minute drive. It would have been an 18-minute round trip for me to go grab my kids. It was like not that big of a deal. And I didn't actually need her help. And so I was getting ready to text her back, being like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. But, we're good. And I stopped myself. I was like, what are you doing? That's such a cock block. Sorry. But it's like, it's just such a like, here is another mom who has the capacity to do a solid for me. By
Mhm.
denying that, I am denying her the opportunity to feel really good about getting to like do something
Right.
pretty easy and just like switching my mentality, going like, that is so rude and borderline unkind to not accept the help
Right.
that she just offered, even if you don't need it. So part of it
Right.
is like lowering our bar. We got to start asking and offering help
Mhm.
before we are in dire straits. And it's just like, there's no way I can be in two places at one time. And I hate to ask this for you,
Right.
like really normalizing that. And so, yes, I would say boldly offering and following up and boldly asking, which definitely is more
Mhm.
scary. And then really freeing yourself up to go, I'm not looking for immediate reciprocation. And I'm okay, I would say 5 times, 10 times, it's not crazy,
Mhm.
to be the
Mhm.
one who is like initiating. Because what you are working towards isn't reciprocity. It is not, I do this for you, you do this for me. What you are working towards is a eventually mutually beneficial, supportive
Mhm.
relationship. And that means being bold and being willing to invest, very similar to finances, like investing consistently
Yep.
month over month, even before you see that compounding interest.
Mhm.
I don't feel like I meet that many people. It happens. I think people are so afraid. Americans are so terrified of being taken advantage of. We are just very concerned with like, but what if I
Yep.
offer and then I keep offering and then I keep offering and then they never do offer. And now all of a sudden I'm in this like toxic one-sided relationship. And we're so afraid of that. I don't meet people very often who actually are experiencing that. If you are in a relationship where you truly do feel like I'm just being taken advantage of and I'm being used, you address it,
Right.
You have a hard conversation around it. And if it doesn't improve, the other
Mhm.
thing we have to understand as we build our relational wealth is like we are all adults with an enormous amount of agency. We're allowed to end conversations. We're
Yeah.
allowed to end friendships and relationships. It's psychologically and emotionally very challenging, but like practically speaking, it's actually not that hard.
Yeah.
I think we have this fear that it's like if I open the door, I'm going to be in this room for the rest of my life. And it's like no, 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 no. You can walk into rooms,
Yeah.
you can do your thing, you can give it great effort, you can try to work it out, and then you can walk yourself right back out if you need to. Okay.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
so with your friends, thank you so much, Julie, for that
Mhm.
question. That was fun to have
Yeah.
some in real time. And Tracy, I'm seeing your comments too. Thanks for participating. Okay, so yes, here is the question that I would ask, or the advice that I would give you for this friend group is to just ask
Right.
and be really explicit about it. I think one of the things that has helped me get relationally rich is my willingness to be very explicit about things that I think some people, everyone's thinking, but are not like articulating and saying out loud. And
Mhm.
so I would be very chalant and
Yeah.
I would ask, I would one name, hey, here are our desires, here are our longings. I do think in a way that really leads with what you want to offer versus what you
Mhm.
want to get. I've had situations before where I felt like there are people that just like want in and they
Right.
want in to get the benefits of being in. And
Right.
I will say, I have experienced the sense of feeling really protective around what I've created because I'm scared. I'm just scared. I'm scared that people are going to come in and be takers, even though I literally just said I actually don't think that that happens as often. I think we're all more afraid of asking than we are actually taking advantage of people.
Mhm.
But I think when you show up as a servant, as a
Mhm.
giver, and as a contributor, and really frame your desire and your longing and what you have to offer and give, and like, is that welcomed? Is that mutually desirable? Versus like, what have you all? And I'm not saying you would do this, but like, what have you built? What have you created that we could come in and benefit for? Like they're not trying out for you.
Right.
Like they have their thing going on. But I
Yes.
think just getting really explicit and saying, like, hey, we're thinking about this move because we desire and long for more community. And then maybe name a couple examples of
Yeah.
like, what does that mean to you? Because I think people can also get Americans, not other people, get really freaked out by like, I don't know, what do you mean by closer community? And just kind of like name,
Mm.
and it sounds like these people are already quite relationally rich. If they're meeting weekly together, they already get it. Like they already understand why it's important. So you're probably actually not even going to have to do that. But I just think like,
Well,
getting
I
specific.
do think, like, that's the men that meet at the church. Like, it is a, do your families wanna do this? Do your like, where's the wife at? Where's the kids? Like, it's more than just like, they understand the benefit for sure, but I think for, like, yeah, this again, I think is like, I knew you'd say this, so we just gotta do it. Like, just go have the conversation and ask before driving the neighborhood is good, but having the conversation is actually what matters.
It's actually what
Yeah.
matters. And it's going to, if the answer isn't what you're longing for, it'll be a huge bummer and it'll be very disappointing. It will be a lot better to have that conversation now than after
Right.
you've moved your
Right.
entire family. And you're
Yeah.
really protecting and setting up the future of those relationships by
Mhm.
protecting even you and Andrew from resentment. Because if you are making a bunch of assumptions and those assumptions turn out not to be true, but now you've kind of oriented your whole life around this move,
Yeah. Yeah.
then all of a sudden you're kind of feeling like, oh, that they owed you something that it's like, oh, Julie, thank you so much for joining and happy momming now that your kids are awake. Um, that it really protects naming
Mhm.
and just articulating what typically gets left unarticulated.
Yeah.
One, it cracks open imagination. Sometimes people don't even know what they want until somebody goes, hey, I want this. Do you want it too? It's a
Yeah.
lot easier to go, oh, me too. Yeah, that sounds great. That is a lot easier than coming up with it in the first place. So it
Mhm.
cracks open the imagination when you're actually the one to name it. And then it also really does protect you against unrealistic expectations or eventual like resentments. If people are like,
Right.
no, we're not actually really interested in that.
Right. Right.
And then I think for you connecting, because there's this kind of strong nucleus of male friendships, which is so cool and it's so rare and it's
I know.
definitely like a nucleus worth kind of indexing on.
Mhm.
But if I were you, I would want to do even more kind of due diligence around the women in the
Mhm.
community. And like Ben and I were actually part of a community in Kansas City who are amazing, amazing, lovely community, so formative for how we think about life. So I don't want it to sound even at all disparaging, but it was pretty male dominant. Like it felt like the nucleus of the community were these male friendships,
Yeah.
and the women weren't nearly as connected to one another. It kind of felt like the women were like supporting the families and then kind of supporting the nucleus of the community, which was the male friendships.
Mhm.
And could we have made it work and helped like eventually change the culture? Absolutely. But for me personally, that was a big deal for me of being like, I don't like it. No like it, no like it. Like I
Yeah.
love that there are strong male friendships happening here.
Right.
But I was like, Ben is gonna be able to like slide in and kind of just like he's going to have a crew and I'm going to be building from scratch. And I
Mhm.
don't really love the idea that I'm swimming upstream while he's skiing downhill.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so building a community where it felt like there was a very similar vision that
Mhm.
male friendship and female friendship are like equally important kind of like pillars of the community was super
Right.
important to me. We mainly ended up starting that from scratch,
Mhm.
but that is also an additional conversation that I would be thinking about if I were
Mhm.
you in this
Okay, I have
scenario.
one question.
Yeah.
I probably have a lot of questions, but I have a question that I
Okay.
think is relatable. So, I kind of think that all we really need in friendships is, like, people that care to be intentional about the relationship, but there is also, like there should be some sense of alignment on, like, I don't know, anything. Like, I feel like there is alignment because of the church, that's the thing that's kinda rooted, but, like, our kids don't do, like, any screens really, and what if their kids have cell phones? And, like, tech is not something to really care, to root your community on. But those types of things of, like, we have pretty intentional things that we've set up as a family. We don't care if everybody does our thing, but, like,
Yeah.
at what point, like, how do you yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Okay.
So
So
answer
this
something.
would be this would be answer something. She says this would be key number 3. So CREATE, the create
Mhm,
framework that y'all are going to learn so much more about.
mhm.
Principle number 3 is ethos.
Ethos, right, yeah.
And ethos is our shared values, kind of the
Mhm,
stated reason for being. Why does this group exist? Why does this community exist? Why are we getting together? What is the purpose? What are the boundaries? Who's in and who's out? And the general rule with ethos is that one, you should have an ethos. When you are
mhm,
out building relationships and community, you should be able to go, I'm doing this for this purpose. If you want to get, relationally rich, just the intentionality of thought. The
mhm,
closer you're going to be to these people, the more aligned you have to be in the
mhm,
ethos. The more casual or the weaker the relational ties, the lower that is. And one thing that we actually have to cultivate in ourselves is an extreme amount of grace and comfort. Like one of the things that I say is if we didn't agree to agree on it, we don't have to agree on it. Now, so with my like proximate best friends that I share property with, there's a
right,
lot I feel like we have to agree on. Like
mhm,
if I am going to have the freedom where my kid can walk over to your house and doesn't have to ask me and doesn't have to ask you and can be in your living room unsupervised, it is actually really important to me that you don't have unlocked iPads in the living room and that our
yeah,
alignment on tech is the same because we are living so close together that like that alignment and agreement really matters. On the opposite side of the spectrum, you know this, it started as a text thread and I just started connecting moms in the neighborhood on a text
mhm,
thread because I realized there's a bunch of moms in our neighborhood that are proximate. We're all within a mile of each other, but we just literally don't know who each other is. The
yeah,
opposite side of that is the ethos of that group is, are you a mom in this square mile that wants to feel like they're a part of a more connected, supportive neighborhood? That's
mhm,
it. If you are a mom and you live in this like part of
right,
the map and you desire for a more supportive mom community, great. you are in, and we don't have to agree on anything. We do not have to agree on politics, religion, tech,
Mhm.
anything, because it's just like this, these are weak tie relationships.
Right.
And so
Mhm.
with these families, it's all just a question of how intimate are you going to be? And you don't have to know this going into it. I would say address the ethos as it kind of like unfolds and ask yourself, well, in order to be a great neighbor to somebody,
Mhm.
what what do I need? And honestly, just having good neighbors. Even if
Yeah.
your neighbors are not like if these people end up not being like your soul friends, but they are people that you can call on to,
Mhm.
watch your kids in the backyard for an hour, there is an enormous amount of value to that as well. And your ethos, what you need to be aligned on and agreed with, is very different. So my like 6 women that I meet with every single week, very aligned ethos. Like what we
Mhm.
value, what we care about, how we
Mhm.
communicate, how we handle conflict. It's so high because I'm like, I am literally giving you authority in my life. Like,
Right.
you are helping me raise my kids.
Mhm.
You are giving me feedback. You are giving me advice on my marriage, my career, my parenting. It's really important to me that like what you think a good, well-lived life is, in a lot of ways is really similar to me because
Right.
I'm giving you so much access and so much authority versus
Mhm.
like Barb and Jill, the neighbor ladies. We need very little agreement other than what it looks like to be a good neighbor to one another. So,
Right.
kind of thinking about ethos as it relates to proximity, intimacy, connection, authority
Mhm.
in one another's lives. And I think you can start with like the lowest level. Even you and Andrew asking yourself, what would be the lowest level of relationship that we could have with these people that we would still feel really good about moving to the neighborhood? And then really
Mhm.
start from there of going like, even if we just got this, we would feel really good about being here and define that for yourself. And then that would be what I would want
Yeah.
to talk to them about. It could be very intimidating and not, if you just like come in with the assumption that they want to be like soul level intimate friends who have authority in one another's lives, whatever.
Hey, I have this friend that has this
Yeah.
shared fence backyard thing. You wanna do that? Like,
Right. Right. So start
right
with the
now. We'll just
lowest
start that
common
now.
denominator. But then name it and then ask about it and just say, like, is this a shared desire? And we feel like we've got some energy and that we could bring to this. And then all of a sudden, you are coming not with a posture as a taker, or a
Right.
consumer, but you're coming with a posture of a co-creator. And I know for me, when I meet a fellow co-creator who's like, I've got energy for connection, I'll be an initiator, I will start stuff, I will follow up. I am like, welcome, please come. Like, it's such a gift when you invite co-creators and initiators into your community. And so really addressing it kind of from here's our vision, here's what we feel like we have to offer. Is this like welcome? Would that be valuable? Versus like
Right.
what have you created and how can we like benefit from
Right.
what you've already created together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My phone's about to die, which is wild
Okay.
because it's
Wait,
noon. So that's actually a really great
that's good.
indicator that at least part one of this conversation, we are going to wrap up. So
Okay.
thank you so much. Those of you who are on, will you please just say hi and like leave a comment? What came up for you? Was this valuable? Do you have your own questions and conversations? This is very life giving to me. And so if it makes sense, I
You
would
want
love
your
to.
own live coaching call with Liz on
N-
Substack?
Honestly, it's like, if you want to do a private coaching call with me, it's going to be a significant financial investment. If you just want to go live on Substack, I'm here for free, baby. You pay for the privacy, if you're willing to go live, honestly. So yes, but I think it's so helpful. I at least feel this way. I don't know if people who are listening to this feel this way, but I think addressing real people in a real life situation, even if the specifics of your situation isn't the same as anyone who's listening to this call, I think it's just like the conversation and the way that we're thinking about it and talking about it is more valuable when there's like more specificity versus like talking in like platitudes, like you should
Yeah.
initiate.
Right.
So, anyway, yes, if anyone is interested in having a live, relationally rich
Mhm.
coaching call and you're willing to broadcast it, drop a comment here or shoot us an email at media@lizboho.com. And we'd be happy to connect and talk about doing this, doing another one. So
Yep.
thank you, Jill. Thanks for
All
coming
right.
on and letting your life be a case study. I am
Yeah.
so encouraged. I am so encouraged and I am so just like motivated by how you and Andrew are thinking about this, just like the level of agency and imagination that you have for making relational wealth such a key
Mhm.
investment and priority in your all's life, and really appreciate that. Oh, Tracy, look at this. Tracy said, I want to be their tour guide when they get here. I'll help them find the parks and the fountains and the libraries and the food and
Awesome.
the secret ways around town. So, Jill,
Perfect.
you have a friend in Tracy, and Tracy is an amazing human being that you are so lucky to be future connected to, who is going to be
Awesome.
waiting to welcome you here to Portland. All
Thank
right.
you,
Thanks,
Casey.
everybody who joined us
All right.
live. Thanks to everybody who's listening. And thank you, Jill, for letting your life be our relationally wealthy case study of the day.
Thanks,
All
Liz.
right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.